Hi, I'm Hilary Hicks, and I'm the Senior Research Historian here at James Madison's Montpelier. And we're now in Nelly Madison's room, and there was quite a contrast between this side of the house where Nelly lived and the other side of the house where James and Dolly lived. Nelly pretty much kept her wing as it had been ever since the house had been built in the 1760s. So there's definitely a contrast that visitors noticed. And this is what Margaret Baird Smith had to say about that contrast. Under the same roof, divided only by a partition wall, was thus exhibited the customs of the beginning and end of a century, thus offering a strange but most interesting exhibition of the differences between the olden and the present age. By only opening a door, the observer passed from the elegancies, refinements, and gaieties of modern life into all that was venerable, respectable, and dignified in bygone days. From the airy apartments, windows opening to the ground, hung with light silken drapery, French furniture, light fancy chairs, gay carpets, etc., to the solid and heavy, carved and polished mahogany furniture, darkened by age, the thick, rich curtains, and the other more comfortable adjustments of our great-grandfather's times. Nelly kept a separate household. She had her own enslaved servants who waited on her. She had her own times of day when she ate, and she kept up with the older tradition of having a midday meal as the main meal, compared to James and Dolly having the more fashionable dinner at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And that actually made a nice opportunity for visitors to see Nelly after her dinner and before they ate with James and Dolly. And this is what Mary Cutts, James and Dolly's niece, had to say about that. She wrote that visitors esteemed it a privilege to be taken at 2 o'clock, her audience hour, from the pictured halls and mirrored walls to the old-time wainscoted and closeted rooms of this most excellent woman. And visitors to Montpelier met Nelly when she was over 80 years old, and in many ways she exceeded their expectations of what an elderly woman would be. This is what Mary Randolph said after meeting Nelly. There is always something melancholy in the sight of old age, even under the best circumstances. But hers appears so respectable and so tranquil, so free from the irritability and waywardness of temper that we often see in persons of her advanced age, that you feel cheered by the conviction that under such a form as this, it is at least a bearable evil. She still possesses her eyesight, her hearing, and her memory in an uncommon degree. You had to be pretty hardy to make it to Nelly Madison's age. She lived to be 97. And when Judith Reeves came here, she was quite surprised to see how Nelly enjoyed the fresh air. She wrote, "My visit to this lady happened to be on a sharp morning. The door and window were both open, though in Virginia fashion a bright little fire was blazing on the hearth. I confess I felt rather a shuddering sensation as I inquired timidly if she did not find the air rather chilly. 'No, my dear,' she replied quickly. 'It would be impossible for me to live without air.'" Now, there are several members of the enslaved community whose story is tied into Nelly Madison. One of them is Sawney, and when he was in his 70s, he was serving Nelly here as a house servant. He had had quite a long time at Montpelier doing different types of work. He accompanied James Madison to Princeton in 1769 and back again. He also was one of James Madison's enslaved overseers, and then in his later years was waiting on Nelly Madison. Another member of the enslaved community was Ben Stewart, who was actually a boy at the time that he was living here. And he had a little memory of Nelly Madison that he talked to a newspaper reporter about in the 1880s. He was being interviewed because of his connections with the Madisons. And he talked about how Nelly Madison kept a bowl of candy here for the enslaved enslaved servants, which we've done in furnishing the house. We have a bowl of horehound candy here. And this sounds like a nice thing, but when you think about it in the context of slavery, Nelly Madison was rewarding the enslaved children for good behavior, essentially training them to be obedient to their enslavers. So it's something that we shouldn't sentimentalize over.